welcome to another top 5 with Kris 05, guys. Today we're gonna check out what are the best decks in Hearthstone right now, so you guys have a better idea of what you should be playing with, as well as what you're playing against. We will go over 5 of the best decks, I'll show you their mulligans, win rates, as well as some general tips, but we're also gonna check out what are all of the other working archetypes for each individual class, so stick around to the end. If you're serious about Hearthstone and like what I'm doing, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching. Now, let's check out the decks.
You are not prepared!
The first variant on the list is actually going to be Flood Pally, which has been taking the throne from Hand Buff Pally according to the stats at least, and right now this is the best variant of it. It's looking pretty similar to what we're already used to seeing in a deck like this, and you're still running all of the heavy hitters. You have the best 3 1-drops in the game for it at least. We have a gold banner for the card draw, Hi-Ho for some holy spells, and the only holy spells in this one would be your couple of Crusader auras, as well as your Boogie Down. We're still running the nerfed Showdown because it's still broken as hell, especially if you manage to combo it with things like Ziliax or with your Prismatic Beam. The Ziliax is obviously going to be discount ++1/+1, and that way you can make some really massive boards. We also have Sea Giants at the end, so you can again cheat them out with the help of Showdown, and you have things like Crusader Aura and Flash Sale, so you can buff them up. Pausek is actually extremely problematic for the opponent to deal with here, because they either have to deal with the 4/4 or a couple of 3/3s or something in between, and a lot of the time that puts them at a disadvantage. We also have Leroy in here as somewhat of a finisher, so a Captain Tarim can handle a lot of things, as well as buff your, let's say, Silverhand Recruit into a 3/7, and also you can use this to make a taunt more bearable. Amidas can be super good as well. You can either use her for buff, or removal, for card draw, and let's not forget that the passive she has is just super broken to deal with. Matchup wise, here's what the stats show, and warriors are usually not gonna be your friends. Mining Rogue apparently is also not that great, and same goes for Rainbow DK. Everything else looks pretty green though. For the mulligans, here's what the stats show going first, and you are gonna want one good 1-drop. You don't really want to keep more than one, and usually the Miracle Salesman is your best bet. The Hi-Ho is pretty nice, muster for battle, especially if you're curving into it. Gold Banner is usually a no-brainer. Ziliax is something you can actually hold on to, especially if you plan on having a very wide board in the early turns, like if the hand supports it, that's gonna help. And you can also decide if you want to be holding on to this if the opponent is also expected to be going wide, so that's gonna help your Ziliax drop faster. Toy Captain Tarim is not something you're gonna be holding on too much of. Pausek can be a good keep, again you kind of want to be curving into it. Same can be said for Boogie Down, like it used to be a super great no-brainer card, now it's a little bit, you gotta kind of have a curve for it. And the rest, you're gonna have to have a good reason to hold on to, although Mining Casualties I think I would also always keep. If you already don't have a Miracle Salesman, you can keep either of the other 1-drops, but don't keep more than one. As for On the Coin, again, it's not that much different, but here Boogie Down becomes a lot more keepable, Salesman is still top tier, Hi-Ho is great, Muster is great, Crusader is acceptable to hold on to, especially if you have a curve for it. Flash Sale is also something you could consider, but don't keep both of them, they're kind of trying to do the same thing. Mining is still great, Showdown even better here, and if you already have Showdown, you might even consider holding on to Prismatic Beam. And that goes for going first as well, even though there it's not as amazing. Gold Banner is still okay, but you're probably not gonna draw more than one card with it, and yeah, the rest, again, you gotta have a good reason to consider it. On the number 2 spot, we also have Hand Buff Pally, obviously. Like, you might argue this is actually the tier 1 deck, myself included, I'd say it is, but according to the stats, it's slightly lower in win rate. But if we honestly sum up all of the popular top decks right now, Hand Buff probably is gonna be taking the throne, and for good reason. It's just super easy to pilot, super broken, very, very consistent in what it does, and yeah, it just gets the job done very quickly. Especially this variant with Yoxaron, which can be extremely powerful. You could use this to steal the new flavor of the month Ziliax kind of deal. The 8-mana Poisonous Reborn is super hard to deal with if you don't have a Yogg, and this one definitely solves that issue. And yeah, the rest of the deck is very standard stuff. I have plenty of guides about this deck, plenty of coaching sessions, you can definitely check those out. And obviously the name of the game is make a big hand, buff a big hand, and drop some big men. Matchup wise, here's what the stats show right now. Flood Pally is not a great matchup for you, and I guess that's why it's actually a little bit higher in the win rate segment right now. Everything else is super green though, so if you are seeing too many Flood Pallys, I guess it might not be the best choice, but for all other cases, it should be top tier for you. Here's what the mulligans show real quick. Going first, here's what it goes like. Drone Deconstructor is a super good key because getting yourself a 1-1 Magnetize early helps you actually start buffing that 1-1 Magnetize for later, and you could get some pretty amazing stuff, like if you get a Stealth out of it, that can be huge. If you get Wind Fury, obviously that's broken. And anything in between can also be pretty interesting, so yeah, pretty nice to have it and start buffing early. Tigris Plushie, depending on the matchup, could be super MVP as well. Theorem is okay, wouldn't really hold on to it if I'm already not having a perfect curve. Instrument Deck is great. If you already have the weapon and Instrument Deck, you might want to cut one out, usually the weapon, so you can actually thin out your deck with this guy, but in certain cases it's not even bad to throw the Instrument Deck and just do something a bit better, like let's say Grim Street Outfitter or something. We also like Ziliax apparently, but it is a little bit tricky. Like the Ziliax here is actually the aggressive twin module plus double up at the start of your next turn. So it can be extremely powerful, especially if you actually manage to buff it a little. But it's also a little bit tricky because you really kind of want to have a decent board state till then, so you can't just straight up hold on to it and expect it to win the game single-handedly, even though sometimes it actually does. Grim Street Outfitter is pretty decent. Outfit Tailor is also nice to against all of those early buffs. Righteous and Gold Banner are usually great, and yeah, the weapon is also good. The rest not so much when going first at least, even though Musclotron is usually a no-brainer as well. As for on the coin, again, pretty similar stuff. I'd say Tigris Plushie is a lot more capable here, Theorem a little bit more capable as well. And the rest is kind of the same stuff. Audiomatic becomes a lot better here because you are going to be going second, so you will want to be contesting the board, trying to get back onto it. And yeah, the rest is kind of the same deal. Kind of weird here that Grim Street Outfitter and Instrument Deck are this low when going second, at least in the win rate segment. As you can see, people still keep the hell out of it, so yeah, mulligan accordingly. For other good pally decks, it's a lot of hand buffs and a lot of flood pallies at the top spots at least. Highlander pally is also up there. I did show you a video with it not so long ago. Here's the list, I think. Pretty respectable stats. But yeah, here's the flood pally I showed you, 59%, and here's the hand buff I showed you, 58%. So definitely pretty good stuff. But yeah, the Highlander is also at a close third, I guess. So honestly, it literally could have been included in this top 5 because some of the lists have less than that win rate with a similar sample size, so there's that. On the number 3 spot, surprisingly, I am including Dragon Token Druid because it does actually have the stats to back it up. It has similar stats to the Highlander pally, more like it. Yeah, it's actually a quite simple deck to be climbing with. You are actually running both the Treant package as well as the Dragon package, and somehow that's working pretty well right now. Like the Treant package gives you a lot of good card draw, and you also get the buff very easily with Cultivation usually. And once you actually stick something like a Dragon Golem boards, you can Cultivation onto it and really get your point across. It's an interesting deck. I wouldn't really expect too much of it in top 1000 Legend or anything like that, but from Diamond to Legend, it's actually a very capable deck. We also have a couple of Dragon Tails in here, and you could get super lucky getting yourself a Zarimi, which basically ensures you're going to be winning that game because it's just such a broken card. And if you want to be having a shot at Zarimi, you have to choose the 5 mana or less part. Don't get baited. The more than 5 mana does not include 5 drops. For some reason, I was having a wrong impression there. But yeah, if you really want a high roll with Zarimi, pick the left side. Matchup-wise, here's what the stats show. Highlander Warrior obviously not going to be great, and Sanity Warlock is also going to be tricky because they have a lot of good AoE and they're usually a lot faster than you, but everything else looks pretty good. Mulligan-wise, here's what the stats show, and you always will want to be having the Splish Splash Whelp. Nothing wrong with a good Gift-Wrapped Whelp on turn 1. Witchwood Apple ain't bad. The Dragon Golems I would never keep, like that's why you have your Summer Flower Child after all. Even though there could be a scenario where you literally have Gift Wrapped, Splish Splash, and Dragon Golem. In that case, that might actually work, because Gift Wrapped buffing +1 on the Dragon Golems, that's definitely not bad. And also you being able to ramp afterwards as well could be pretty good, but it's definitely not something you should be considering at all. Aerosolizer ain't bad for the early turns. Desert Nest Matron is usually great. If the hand supports it, Overgrown could also be a consideration. So yeah, keep these stats in mind when you're trying to mulligan going first. And here's what it looks like going second. Not much different. The Ziliax in this one is actually +1/+1 as well as the discount, which is kind of interesting. But again, with the help of the Dragon Golems, it's actually pretty easy to drop like that. As long as you have enough room. Like, be careful if the Dragon Golem actually has 7 dragons. You're not going to be able to actually drop the Zilly as well, so keep that in mind. But yeah, the rest is kind of looking the same stuff. For other good Druid decks, here's the one I showed. Almost 2,000 games, almost 58% win rate, definitely pretty broken stuff. But we can also see things like Hybrid Hero Power Druid are still working. Highlander Druid is also doing pretty respectably well. There's also this Boomkin Druid that can actually be doing some pretty broken things, especially in Top Legend, where people actually know how to pilot it well. There's also Straight Up Dragon Druid doing okay, not as good as the other one, but still respectable. So yeah, you have plenty of different versions of Druids to pick from. On the number 4 spot, we also have Zarimi Priest, which has been a pretty good deck for quite a while now. Despite a few nerfs here and there, it's still doing pretty well. It's not a very easy deck, like compared to the first 3 decks, this is the hardest out of the bunch. But if you are into having a challenge, this one is definitely gonna be a pretty good list for you to be running the Legend with. As long as you know what you're doing with it, you should be having a breeze. A lot of the time it actually doesn't even come to Zarimi nowadays, even though it did get nerfed up to 8. A lot of the times you can actually zerg the hell out of the board as soon as turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. You can do a lot of broken things with the help of things like Funnel Cake, with the help of Thirsty Drifters, with Ziliax, with Celestial Projectionist. You can be doing amazing stuff like that. Because this is a lot of mana cheat, basically. You get a lot of card draw with the Clergies. And you can actually drop 0 mana Ziliaxes with the help of Celestial Projectionist, especially if the opponent actually sticks some board against you as well. So a lot of broken things can happen with this deck. We also have a single fly off the shelves in this one, so you can actually handle some early to mid-game aggression and control the board that way. Maggot is in here to give you a lot of card draw, and we also have Hearthstone Brew, which can basically give you a second shot at winning the game if the Zarimi plan is not panning out. Matchup-wise, here's what it looks like. Pain Warlock is still going to be bad for you, but it's a lot less popular nowadays, so not that big a deal. Highlander Pally apparently is not that great either, and Rainbow Death Knight, same can be said for that as well. The rest looks pretty good though. Depending on the matchup, you are going to play either for Zarimi or for early game tempo. Like if you're something against Highlander Warrior, you're going to be playing for the Zarimi and basically OTK him around turn 7, turn 8. Try to do it turn 8 the latest. Unless you're okay with skipping turn 9 to kill them, because Reno can be dropping on those turns. But yeah, with a lot of the other matchups, it's usually trying for the early game tempo and not really caring about the Zarimi. Like, if the early game tempo fails, the Zarimi is gonna help later anyway. Mulligan-wise, it's not a very easy deck to mulligan for, I can tell you that much, but things like Crimson Clergy, like Miracle Salesman, like Well Prepped, they're always gonna be great. Gift Wrapped is also nice. Power Chord is going to be something you can hold on to when you already have something like Crimson Clergy, or at least a Gift Wrapped or something like that. Scale Replica is an okay thing to be holding on to. It's not the best thing you can be doing on turn 2, but it does give you a lot of gas. Funnel Cake can be amazing if you already have a Clergy or 2. And also, the Ship's Children can be a great keep as well. The rest, you're gonna have to have a good reason to consider them. As for On the Coin, here's what it looks like. Again, pretty similar stuff. The Clay Matriarch is not really something you want to hold on to too much of, by the way. Like, I'm not sure why a 6 drop is this high on both first and second deal. Like, it is gonna help you, I guess, against the slower matchups and such, but usually it's not something you're gonna be looking for, I'd say. But yeah, the rest is kind of the same stuff. Here, fly off the shelves can be a bit more keepable depending on the matchup. For other good priests, as you can see, a lot of Zarimis out there. We also have Highlander Priest doing okay, small sample size though. This one is a bit bigger with a little bit less win rate. There's also this Overheal Priest out there, which is very high skill cap. Somebody actually did hit rank 1 legend with it, but it's definitely not something for most people to really try with. It's an interesting deck, but I wouldn't really recommend it the most. And lastly, we have actually this new Tempo Shaman, I think Jambre cooked up. It's looking pretty interesting. I've seen it here and there on ladder. Usually it's an easy win, but apparently it does have the stats to back it up. It's new. It's new at least, and it also has nostalgia in there, so that's kind of fun. It's a not so hard deck to pilot. It's definitely not as hard as Zarimi, You basically go wide on the boards, and you try to make a big nostalgia, but obviously that's not your only win con. You can also just tempo a lot with the help of things like backstage bouncers. The Murlocs are pretty annoying to handle, especially in the early turns. We also have Hagatan here, and you can buff those with the help of Wish Upon a Star. You also have Horn of the Windlord, which you can combo a lot of damage with Turn of the Tides. Ziliax is in here with the +1 as well as the -1. It's kind of weird that we don't have something like a Bloodlust in here, like at least the gift or something. Definitely feels like it could make use of it. We also have the building blocks in here, which give you a bunch of 1-drops on which you can do good nostalgia on. The Titan is obviously in here. You can use it in all sorts of different ways. You don't really have that many overload cards in this one though, do you? So drawing for free, I guess the Turn the Tide is an overload card. But other than that, is there anything overloady in here? I don't think there is. So yeah, be careful what you choose. It's usually going to be for the free damage AoE plus healing. As for the matchups, we don't really have all that much stats for it, but apparently it's good against hand buff as well as Highlander Warrior, so that's something. And as for the mulligan, here's what the stats are going to be showing. Building block seems like a little bit too high, but it's definitely not a bad card if you're curving into it. Jukebox is pretty good. Miracle Salesman's fine. Ziliax can be a keep. Trusty Companion, I guess if you already have something like, let's say Jukebox, I think. I don't know. The weapon is not something you're usually going to hold on to. Backstage Bouncer can be huge. Needle Rock is fine. The Murloc Glowfin I'd say is great. And the rest probably not so much. As for on the coin, here Pop-Up Book becomes a lot more keepable, because you are going second, so having an answer is not going to be bad. Backstage is still great. Wave of Nostalgia, a little bit high on the keep list, but I guess if you're curving into it, you can actually do some pretty nasty stuff. Building Block Golem still great. Murloc Glowfin still great. Depending on the matchup, the Titan can be nice. And yeah, mulligan accordingly. For other good Shaman decks, we also have Nature Tempo Shaman doing quite alright, especially in High Legend, but it's definitely not an easy deck, so again, not the most recommendable thing for Diamond to Legend people. Highlander Shaman is also decently good, and the rest is iterations of those three, as far as I can tell. That's it for the 5 decks. Now let's check out the other classes we haven't mentioned. Starting off with Death Knight, we can see Rainbow Death Knight, the Highlander kind, is doing best right now. Can't buff Death Knight, not so great. And the other variations are also nothing that amazing, honestly. So moving down to the next class, we have Demon Hunter here, and the Shopper Demon Hunter is still doing quite fine. This one has a pretty small sample size. This is not just Shopper, this is actually the Sharpshooter variant. Here's the Shopper Demon Hunter. It's respectably well. 1,000 games with 55% is definitely acceptable. With Hunters, we have plenty of different decks to pick from. A lot of small sample sizes at the top, at least. The first notable deck would be Spell Token Hunter with 1,800 games, 56% win rate. Definitely not bad. Secret Hunter with 55 with a lot of games. Highlander Hunter is also doing quite alright. And we have several different very small sample size lists of those archetypes. So I guess it can do a lot better, but at least the decks the masses are using are not doing as amazing as the lists I've already showed you. As for mages, Spell Mage is still doing best. Plenty of small sample size lists at the top. The first notable one would be at 53% win rate, so far from spectacular. Elemental Mage is also playable, but not amazing. Sith Mage, I've seen a few here and there, but it's not really popular, nor that amazing according to the stats at least. For Rogues, you're actually gonna see plenty of Rogues in top 1000 Legend. The reason is the deck is very versatile and you can do a lot of nasty things with it, but you have to really be good with it in order to maximize on it. Mining Rogue apparently is doing quite well from Diamond to Legend. Not that amazing, obviously, but still respectable. Miracle Rogue is also one of the best decks in top 1000 because it can do a lot of nasty things. Some lists actually include the Speaker Stomper or at least the Cult Neophyte so they can counter all of those spell-heavy decks at the top. These not so much, but still worthy contender for a good deck for top legend. At least you can check my guides about it and whatnot. And the rest is just iterations of these two, I think. Like there is also a Sonya Rogue, which is a lot more heavy on the Sonya part, like doing some big nasty weapons and such. I'm not sure I'm seeing it right now, but even if I were, it's not really a deck for Diamond to Legend players usually. With Warlock, honestly, I could have just as easily shown you Insanity Warlock instead of the Shaman, because the Shaman was... Here's what the Shaman is, 56.9 1000 games. As for the Warlock, I guess it's a little bit lower, 56.6 with 4000 games, however. And it's also a deck doing quite well on top 1000 Legends, so it has that going for it. So yeah, Insanity is definitely a very, very capable deck from Diamond to Legend right now. It's not the most easy thing to play, but definitely very broken if you know how to handle it. And you can check out again my gameplay videos and guides about it. Bane Warlock is still doing quite alright. It's a bit harder to balance life and death kind of deal, but still very, very capable. Sludge Warlock is also up there, 55% win rate, 1000 games. And we do also see from time to time some more control-y variants, but as you can see, the win rate is just not there for them, like under 50. And lastly, we have Warrior, and Highlander Warrior is still probably the best bet for it. We're also seeing some iterations of Odin Warrior. There's also this Control Warrior, which is not a Reno list, but it still runs things like Boom Boss and such. It's actually pretty strong. I played it, gave you a video about it and whatnot. Here's the Odin Warrior I was talking about. 57% win rate almost, so also could have just as easily gotten included with this big sample size. Yeah, these would be your free best bets. They're all control-y, so if you're into that life, Warrior might be the deck for you. So that's gonna be it for this top 5, guys. Hope this helps you figure out what you want to be playing to hit Easy Legend in this season. If you enjoyed the video and like what I'm doing, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to get time for some Hearthstone coaching. Thanks for watching, I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video or stream.